Welcome to Rapid Fire Wednesday Q&A for immigration professionals. I'm Kimberley Robidoux with WR Immigration in San Diego, and I'm here with Miki Matrician, co-managing partner of WR Immigration's Boston office. Hey, Miki, how are you?
Hey, Kimberly, I'm good. How are you?
Good. All right, so we're going to move on to a different topic today, and this is in response to one of our benchmarking surveys in which many corporate immigration professionals noted that one of their current pain points is cost projection and budgeting with respect to immigration costs. So with the unexpected and very significant increase in the USCIS filing fees that became effective April 1st, which was announced by Immigration Service in February. So there wasn't a lot of time for anybody to really plan and prepare for these increased costs. We noticed that with the skyrocketing costs, there are a lot of questions with respect to how are we going to budget for the rest of the year? What do we move around if the budget is super tight, right? So it has been several years since USCIS increased their filing fees. So that's one of the reasons this was so big of a hit. They might hopefully not do a significant increase again in the future, maybe just do incremental, but the unknown going forward, that's one of the things that we are asking our HR professionals to kind of build into their immigration cost projections. So, Miki, what do immigration professionals want to look at when determining costs for their immigration programs?
Yeah. So when I talk with HR clients about projections and cost containment strategies, I focus in on four main areas. And the first one is really to kind of assess the scale and the scope of the program and what kind of changes are expected, if any. So, for example, not only the number of foreign nationals that are sponsored employees, but what are expected changes in headcount in the coming year or so. Maybe there's growth in a certain department, or maybe there's a new product line being introduced. And then we can also look at company policies on what the company currently sponsors and what kind of changes could be made to tweak that.
Okay. So, it is important to get the lay of the land first so HR can assess the impact. And you mentioned sponsorship policies. So, what are some options that HR professionals can take a look at?
Yeah, when I talk with HR, one point that always comes up on cost containment strategies is who pays for what. So, for example, does the company cover premium processing for every eligible filing, including H-1 extensions? Does the company pay for premium processing when the employee has made personal travel plans, that kind of thing? Maybe the company wants to revisit that and limit covering premium processing costs for only cases that really need it to, avoid a gap in work authorization, for example. But some companies want to retain policies on covering premium processing for retention purposes, right? So, if the company doesn't pay for it, then can the sponsored employee elect to pay for it if they just want their decision more quickly? Those types of things.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So, another example for consideration that HR brings up when assessing immigration costs is for cases filed for dependents of their foreign national employees. So, does the company cover the costs of dependent extensions or change of status and associated work authorization applications? Is one question. It might be an area that companies may want to revisit given the significant increase in filing fees. So, what are you talking with HR professionals about, Miki?
Yeah, I'm seeing that more and more often of companies kind of pushing those costs off for dependent family members. And I think one factor to consider too is if the immigration budget is centralized under HR, or that would be a different situation than if it's decentralized across departments. So, either way, I think the most streamlined immigration programs really are those where HR is working proactively with the departments to balance, competing interests, right? What makes the most sense from a business perspective and then from a talent retention perspective. And so sponsorship policies should be aligned with that larger business goal.
Okay. Yeah, good point on that. So I go to your second area.
Yeah, totally. That first one took a little while. So, the second one is identifying priorities for key stakeholders. I think it's worthwhile talking about, what KPIs are the executives in the company prioritizing? And then also, what are the KPIs that HR or global mobility teams are being measured by?
Yeah, and I do hear from our clients, right, about HR performance being measured by that employee experience, right? How is the immigration piece of it related to their job performance or their just happiness with everything on the job? And that goes towards human resources. So how does that, kind of factor into, and I understand it's one of the difficulties that HR professionals have, but yeah, with immigration being at the potentially at the bottom of the barrel and fees with respect to premium processing have gone up exponentially. So what can HR professionals do with respect to that employee experience and certain costs?
Yeah, I think there's definitely that tension, right? About, HR being measured by employee experience and the employee feeling taken care of, and then the costs that go along with more service. I think at WR, we do a great job of leveraging AI and automation so that people kind of still get the premium experience, but it is a really good value.
Yeah, that's true. Our bots, Ray and Rosie, do make it possible for us to provide excellent service. And with that being said, what is your third area of focus?
Yeah, the third area I focus on with HR is a review of past immigration cases and their outcomes. So that means pulling reports and leveraging them to look at data from previous years to find patterns and trends. For example, maybe certain business units see a surge in L1 transfers during a certain period of the year, or for certain industries, that might mean planning to test the labor market for a green card case at a certain time in the year because of the nature of the recruitment cycle. Things like that to kind of identify when are there surges, when is there more cost impact.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example. Adding on to that, can you explain how HR can use that information about the patterns of past immigration cases and outcomes in order to assist with their budget projections?
Yeah, so, I think just really kind of getting a hold of the lay of the land and when does cost hit. There are strategies that you can use to reduce the overall cost without sacrificing service. And this kind of information really can help HR to be proactive and get ahead of the game so that they can essentially run it up the chain to the C suite, and so that the business isn't surprised when there is a bump in cost. It makes HR look streamlined and organized.
And so now, what is your fourth area of focus when talking with HR professionals about cost projections and cost containment strategies?
Yeah, I think it's a really important that, cost projections are more accurate when HR is dialed in to current trends and upcoming changes in the law or regulations in partnership with Immigration Council. So, for example, if the Biden administration is issuing executive orders to support AI and STEM initiatives, that opens up national interest waivers for STEM workers, for example, essentially making options available where they weren't available before. And then HR can work with counsel to assess if there's a cost impact to that. And I think, don't forget about the elections coming up this fall. That's definitely, potentially going to be a factor too. If there is a change in administration, that could significantly change the landscape, including potential increase in processing time. So, now, one thing I want to raise too is the example of green card backlogs, fluctuating. And if the numbers open up all of a sudden, that might mean a large number of I-485 adjustment of status green card applications that need to be filed. And does the company currently pay for those costs? Is the company planning to change the policy? It's good to be prepared ahead of those changes. And so, Kimberly, I want to ask you, what has been happening with the quarter backlogs and the visa bulletin that could impact the analysis around budget projections?
That's another key consideration for HR professionals is the fact that just recently we have had quota backlogs for rest of the world under EB2 and EB3. And for a really long time, when we had somebody who might be maxing out or ending their STEM OPT extension, and we could proceed with a concurrently filed I-140 immigrant worker petition plus an adjustment of status application and get temporary work authorization while that green card process was pending in order to keep that person, that key employee, so to speak, in the United States rather than having them leave, right? Which can be pretty significant impact to the organization. So with this quota backlog now with rest of the world, filing those concurrent I-140 and I-45s is almost impossible in many situations. So it can't be a last minute strategy. It's taking a look in the foreseeable future and being way more proactive than, HR professionals and attorneys have been in the past, because we've had this potential option taken away from us. And it also can add to cost to the organization, right? So if an individual is no longer able to remain in the US because one of these key strategies is no longer available, it could mean immigration costs to send that individual to another country to work from abroad while waiting and trying to get them back into the United States. So that adds a whole other layer of complexity to cost projections. With these key pieces of information to think about with an immigration cost projection, what other strategies, Miki, can HR immigration professionals enlist to reduce costs?
Yeah, I think there's a few things to consider when thinking about cost projections. And one is, the first step I think is to generate a report to start by forecasting visa renewals and new applications for new and existing employees. And so then using that data analytics and a few different models to try to project future immigration needs and develop a contingency plan for unexpected changes in visa regulations based upon what we know now. And I think timing is really important for fee considerations. I mean, starting the renewal process early enough so that premium processing fees doesn't become a standard practice. That's important. And, HR professionals can consider negotiating bulk rates with service providers if they have large volume.
Okay. Yeah, those are some good options to consider. And then, sometimes we are asked the question, is there a one size fits all approach or strategy when projecting a budget for immigration costs that you recommend?
Yeah. So, every program is different, with different priorities and concerns. And one example that I mentioned is whether your budget for immigration is centralized under HR or under a different department or decentralized, right? And I think it's important to revisit your sponsorship strategy and make sure it lines up and, making sure that you're balancing priorities that are specific to the company. What works for one company isn't going to always work for another company. And there's size differences too. There's considerations that are more important for larger employers with larger immigration programs versus smaller employers and vice versa. So those are just some of the things that I would discuss with my clients.
All right. Thank you, Miki. I really appreciate the insight that you have. And just want to do a shout out. If you are a corporate immigration professional in the Southern California area, the Southern California Relocation Council is having their meeting in Oceanside, California this Thursday. I will be on a panel with our other attorney, Justini Aguirre-Gamez, and we hope to see you there if you're going to join us. And we're going to be talking about immigration cost containment and creating predictability in the budgeting process. So come out and join us if you're here. If you have questions, please post a comment or send us a direct message. And if you don't already, please follow us on our LinkedIn page for WR Immigration or Miki and my personal page and profiles. And we also transcribe this live stream and post it to a weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to. The link to subscribe is in the comment section. And with that, it's a wrap for another Rapid Fire Wednesday. And thank you so much, Miki.
Thanks, Kimberly. Good luck with your panel. I'm sure it's going to be fabulous.
Thank you so much.